What is going on, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back with the box office breakdown for Sunday, June 28th, and it is time to discuss Supergirl and the DC Universe. So here are the numbers according to Variety. Supergirl opened to $38 million domestic with an additional $30 million globally. That's disastrous. Only a couple weeks ago, this film was projected to open as high as $55 million domestic, and if you believe Warner Brothers, the movie had a budget of $170 million, not to mention the massive marketing campaign. But even more alarming is the movie's cinema score, because cinema score polls audience members as they exit the theater, and these are actual paying customers who chose to get in their car, drive to a theater, and buy an overpriced ticket along with overpriced junk food. And for me, the cinema score is more important than reviews by critics or YouTubers or influencers, because this is where the rubber meets the road with audience members that are at least on some level excited to see the movie, and they gave the movie a B-. And that might not sound so bad initially, but typically any movie outside the horror genre, if it gets less than a B+, it means the movie's going to have very little staying power and rather calamitous drops in its second and third weekends. So any chances of this movie breaking even theatrically have been totally obliterated. So now the question is, what went wrong? The easier question to answer would be, what went right? My response would be very little, because obviously they had the wrong screenwriter, they had the wrong director, they had the wrong producer. They basically just had the wrong concept strategically when it comes to launching a new cinematic universe featuring all the characters from DC. I just feel like it was a complete and total miscalculation across the board. And the most bizarre phenomenon that I saw over the weekend was watching as Grace Randolph and The Critical Drinker had very similar talking points about the movie. And spoiler alert, neither one of them liked the movie, but in general, it's tough to get those two individuals to even agree on the color of the sky. They are on complete and total opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to the ongoing culture war surrounding big budget mainstream movies.
This does not look like this is gonna end well for you guys.
But if we want to look for a silver lining in this box office debacle, perhaps we can say that crappy movies like Supergirl have the capacity to help all of us overcome our differences and join hands in calling out crummy superhero movies when they fail to deliver. And if James Gunn's team over at DC continues down this path in the years to come, they might accidentally bring about harmony to the entire universe. But in all seriousness, this is a real problem for Warner Brothers and the James Gunn regime at DC. And they have a few projects on the horizon that have some potential. I don't think Lanterns is going to be any good, but Clayface this fall has a very small budget, and people responded very favorably to that initial trailer. And who knows, maybe James Gunn will course correct a bit between now and next year when Man of Tomorrow comes out. And it might end up being like the coolest sci-fi superhero movie that we've ever seen as Superman and Lex Luthor team up to take on Brainiac. That's the kind of story that genuine superhero nerds can get totally fired up to see, but once again, it's totally execution dependent. But it always bewilders me how frequently execution is left out of the conversation when discussing why an individual superhero movie either fails or succeeds. But the reality is, whether you love superhero movies or hate superhero movies, or you're kind of ambivalent, not all superhero movies are created equal. Like if you watch the original Captain America from the early 90s, when Red Skull's speaking in Italian and Captain America has rubber ears, that is not as good as Captain America Civil War. Like, oh, well, how come that movie failed and how come that other movie succeeded? Well, Captain America Civil War was fucking phenomenal. I mean, just that airport battle alone, I was in the theater screaming and high-fiving with total strangers going, fuck yeah, fuck yeah. I mean, it was like going to the fucking Super Bowl. Whereas the original Captain America, which I think went straight to VHS back in the early 1990s, even when I was like 14 or 15 watching, I was like, yeah, this isn't good. But for whatever reason, people always want to like ignore quality when it comes to discussing movies. And I feel like when it comes to Supergirl, obviously hiring a screenwriter who had one credit to her name, a short film from 2018, that was disastrous. Hire a veteran, hire somebody who's really good at writing superhero stories, and you'll probably have better results. And Craig Gillespie as the director, I mean, he's great when it comes to making movies like I, Tonya, which is, like a biopic about a scandal in the world of Olympic ice skating. And I saw it and I enjoyed it. But he's much more interested in reality and true life stories and that sort of thing. I don't think he gives a damn about superheroes, but I think they wanted a director who had a track record of doing a good job with like female-led franchises like Cruella. And Cruella was a massive success, but if you have a director who's not interested in the world or the concept or what you're trying to flesh out, like the whole world of Supergirl, or at least the whole universe of Supergirl, it felt so empty. Like there was no imagination when it came to the depiction of the planets or the alien races, or all the various superpowered individuals that Supergirl might have encountered as she's exploring the universe. There was just a complete and total lack of imagination. And for anybody who loves DC Comics from any era, from like the late 30s up through the present day, DC It's colorful, it's big, it's bold, it's explosive, it's full of gods and monsters. This whole phase of the DC universe is called Gods and Monsters by James Gunn. But there were precious few gods and monsters on display in Supergirl. It just felt like just a fart in the wind. It was a non-event. And on a corporate level, this failure comes at a very inopportune time. Keep in mind, Warner Brothers is currently being absorbed by Paramount Skydance, and the last thing DC needed was for their second movie to be an outright bomb. But just to get an idea of how bad the situation truly is, let's do a little compare and contrast with some other recent superhero movies at DC as well as Marvel, and then I feel like we'll have a better idea or a clearer understanding of where James Gunn and his team stand moving forward. So let's start with some cinema scores for some other superhero movies, and luckily Anthony D'Alessandro over at Deadline has us covered. So here's what he wrote yesterday. Cinema score yesterday was a B-, which is lower than DC's Ezra Miller tabloid impacted The Flash, B. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, B. Ryan Reynolds' 2011 bomb, Green Lantern, B. Shazam! Fury of the Gods, B+, and Marvel Studios' Rock Bottom The Marvels, B cinema score. And if you really want to understand how grim things are for Supergirl, The Marvels opened higher than Supergirl with 46 million, but it topped out at 206 million worldwide. So if Supergirl follows a similar trajectory, there's a chance that the final box office tally globally for Supergirl might be less than 200 million, meaning that there's certain independent horror movies out there that have been doing very well lately at a very small fraction of the budget that might end up outgrossing Supergirl, which would be incredibly humiliating. But if you want to compare the opening weekend of Supergirl to some other DC movies prior to the James Gunn reboot, here are some numbers to digest. So Blue Beetle back in 2023 opened to 25 million and finally topped out at 130. The Flash opened to 55 million, topped out at 271 million. Shazam! Fury of the Gods opened to 30 million, topped out at 134. Black Adam opened to 67 and made it to 393. And The Suicide Squad, which obviously you have to kind of grade it on a curve because it opened during the pandemic, and it also opened simultaneously on HBO Max as well as in theaters, but that opened at 26 million and finally topped out at 168 million. So yeah, it looks like Supergirl very likely could end up grossing somewhere around like 175 to 225 million, which would be way short of the break-even point. And people always disagree about what the official break-even point for any given movie might be. But in general, but not always, if you take the budget of the film, multiply it by 2.5. That'll account for the revenue split with theaters as well as your marketing costs. So let's do a quick bit of math. 170 million times 2.5 equals 425 million. Yeah, Supergirl's not going to get anywhere close. This is a complete and total biblical level disaster for this franchise. But for our final comparison, let's talk about Big Blue himself, Superman, which opened last year. Superman got an A- cinema score, and it ended up doing pretty goddamn well domestically, less so internationally. Clearly, Superman is more popular here in America than he is in the rest of the world. But that movie opened to 125 million, not bad at all. And ultimately, it ended up grossing 354 million domestic and 264 million internationally for a grand total of 618 million. That's not a home run success, but it's not a failure either. It's just enough to indicate there's interest in this universe. There's interest in exploring more of these characters. But holy smokes, if you wanted to have your second movie be Supergirl, what you really needed was a Superman movie that made like, $1.5 billion so that Supergirl might have a chance of grossing like 500 million. Because as any comic book nerd can tell you, going back to the fucking 1960s when the character was first gaining popularity on the page, Supergirl's not as popular as Superman. It's just a reality. And some people are going to go, oh, how dare you? And the reality is also, the fans of Supergirl, at least like in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, tended to be teenage boys. I think the biggest miscalculation of this movie was gearing it towards young women, but young women didn't show up. And if you go over to Deadline, Anthony D'Alessandro has all the demographic data you could ever ask for. So Supergirl was clearly made for young women, targeting young women, and yet the audience was still 59% men. Imagine how many men might have shown up if they had geared the movie toward a more masculine sensibility, like much more hardcore action, much more sex appeal, basically all the things that teenage boys like to watch. Like imagine a hypothetical scenario where they cast Sydney Sweeney in the role as opposed to Millie Alcock, and instead of doing that kind of bulky, baggy suit, instead put her in skin-tight spandex or latex or something incredibly revealing with a really short miniskirt, and just spent the entire movie watching her just beat the fuck out of Jason Momoa as he's laughing and cracking up because Lobo's immortal, you can't kill him. That actually probably would have been a pretty entertaining movie, but the movie has this really dour, serious tone, and you got this annoying little girl speaking in that annoying English accent the entire movie, like, they murdered my innocent family. The movie took itself way too goddamn seriously. Whereas if you look at Supergirl adventures back in the day, she was traveling into the future and going on adventures with the Legion of Superheroes, or getting kidnapped by Darkseid and getting like her brain rewired to become evil. There's some really cool Supergirl stories out there, and yet they chose to just create this absolutely drab, boring, bland, just relentlessly grim story. So it's no surprise to me whatsoever why this movie's failing to connect. But as far as what the future might hold for DC movies is concerned, I'm going to borrow a phrase from the world of video games where anytime somebody asks a stupid question on a forum, people typically respond in a very sarcastic way, get good, G-I-T-G-U-D. But superhero movies do need to get good. Not all superhero movies are created equal, and at a time where people are really increasingly bored by superhero movies, the movies need to be fucking amazing. They need to be Hall of Fame, like the best superhero movies you can think of. And as much as people might like to talk about superhero movie fatigue, Spider-Man Brand New Day might end up grossing like $2 billion. So then where your arguments, clearly these movies are execution dependent. And if you deliver what Spider-Man fans like, people will show up in droves. And if you fail to deliver what Supergirl fans like, then people will stay home. And I think it's no more complicated than that. But who knows? Maybe Clayface will be a runaway smash this fall. I mean, the trailer's cool, the budget's low, and it looks like it's going to lean all the way in to being a really cool horror movie. I would have recommended put Batman in the movie. Like, Clayface is much more interesting when he's got Batman chasing him around, but no one asked for my opinion, but I feel like the ultimate test for the DC universe is going to be Man of Tomorrow next summer. So we shall see what the future might hold. But Supergirl wasn't the only new movie which came out this past weekend. We also had a new Jackass movie, and the Jackass franchise is near and dear to my heart. Check out my review in the link below if you want to hear my thoughts about the film.
Welcome to the first day of our last film. What are you feeling? I'm sad. Does it make you sad, Chris? No, I'm not in touch with my emotions.
The movie definitely underperformed with 8.2 million domestic and 1.9 million abroad. And even though the budget was only 10 million, this is definitely a miss. But as I mentioned in my review for the film, the biggest problem with Jackass Best and Last is that like 30% of the movie is flashbacks to earlier movies. And if you like the Jackass franchise, well, you've already seen this movie many times. Like, those are some of the best bits that they chose to include in this, but it's a retread. I'm happy to go back and rewatch the old Jackass movies. I want new stunts, new gags, just new insanity. And the new stuff that's in there is good. And they also have a few kind of hard to find clips from the late 90s that I had never seen before. But I would have recommended that if this is going to truly be the last Jackass movie, we need all new shit from start to finish and send people out on a high note. So it's not surprising to me at all that it is underperforming. And I'm just going to have a quick look at the rest of the top 10 to see how things are doing. Masters of the Universe is at number 9. It's about to fall out of the top 10. Mandalorian and Grogu's at number 10. It's about to fall out of the top 10. Those movies are basically done. Scary Movie. It reached an interesting milestone. I know a lot of people didn't like the new Scary Movie. However, it crossed 100 million domestic. And the last time a comedy, an outright comedy, not like an action comedy, but a comedy, crossed the 100 million mark domestic, was back in 2017 with Girls Trip. So is this a sign that the universe is trying to heal and comedies are trying to make a comeback? I keep rooting for comedies to make a comeback, but what we really need are some new comedy franchises. Like, I'm Gen X. I love Gen X filmmakers. I love watching Jackass movies and Scary Movie movies. Like, they definitely appeal to my tastes and preferences, but what we really need is the next Scary Movie franchise, the next Jackass franchise, because these old timers, they're not going to live forever, and they can't keep like kind of whipping out the same bag of tricks over and over and over again. So bring back the comedy, but what we really need is the next generation to take inspiration from Scary Movie and Jackass and come up with their own stuff. What else is going on? Disclosure Day is still in the top 5. It grossed 8.1 million. It's almost at 100 million domestic. I still think the movie completely and totally sucked, but maybe it won't be completely humiliating when it comes to its final box office tally. And of course, Obsession is still hanging in there at number 3. It's been in the top 5 for 7 weeks. It made 9.8 million this past weekend. That is bananas. And yeah, I'm just going to call it now. Obsession is going to end up outgrossing Supergirl, and that movie was made for $750,000. But I think at this point I've yammered and blathered enough. Let's hear what the experts have to say over at Variety with Rebecca Rubin's article titled Box Office, Supergirl Stumbles with $38 million Debut, Toy Story 5 remains number one with $70 million. Supergirl is struggling to take flight at the box office. The comic book adaptation, a space adventure revolving around Superman's cousin, debuted to a disappointing $38 million from 3,600 North American theaters and $68 million globally. Heading into the weekend, the Warner Brothers and DC Studios film was targeting a domestic start around $50 million to $55 million, which already would have been a soft launch for such a big budget tentpole. Initial ticket sales are concerning for the studio because the movie's polarizing reception, as well as the intense competition during the peak of summer movie season, could limit its theatrical staying power. That would be a problem because Supergirl carries a substantial $170 million price tag, not including the mega marketing budget. Although economics vary from studio to studio, a movie of this size would need to earn at least $375 million to break even, since cinema owners get to keep roughly half of revenues. Critics didn't like Supergirl, which holds a 56% on Rotten Tomatoes, while audiences appear mixed, with a B- grade on CinemaScore exit polls. Millie Alcock plays Supergirl, who travels through the cosmos with her trusty pup Crypto the Superdog. When she encounters an alien girl named Ruthie, she reluctantly joins her on a quest for vengeance and justice. Craig Gillespie, best known for I, Tonya and Cruella, directed the film from a script by Anna Nogueira, The Vampire Diaries. Supergirl arrives a year after Superman, which rebooted the DC universe under the direction of James Gunn and Peter Safran. That film, starring David Cornsweet as the Man of Steel, ignited to $125 million and ended its run with $618 million, a decent result at a time when superhero movies have been worryingly earthbound. After the debut of Superman, Warner Bros. Discovery CEO David Zaslav championed the bold 10-year plan of the new DC universe, saying the vision is clear, the momentum is real, yet the start for Supergirl indicates the road to building an interconnected film franchise and fashioning a rival to Disney's Marvel Cinematic Universe has hit its first speed bump. Moreover, Superman had the benefit of centering on one of the most recognizable heroes of all time, while his cousin Kara Zor-El, aka Supergirl, isn't a household name. The staying power of Supergirl could signal whether lesser-known characters get the big screen treatment, or future installments in the DC Universe will focus solely on marquee characters. Up next is October's Clayface, which carries a substantially smaller $40 million budget, followed by 2027's Superman Man of Tomorrow, which brings back two heavyweights, Cornsweet's Clark Kent and Nicholas Hoult's Lex Luthor, as the adversaries team up to take down a bigger threat. Let me pause for my first interruption with a little prediction. If Superman Man of Tomorrow is not the best goddamn movie of James Gunn's career, and not the highest grossing movie of James Gunn's career, I think his new DC universe is basically over before it even had a chance to get started. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if in 3 to 5 years we see Matt Reeves getting promoted to take over the spot. Matt Reeves' second Batman movie will probably be pretty goddamn good. His Batman movie a couple of years ago, at least the first 2/3, ruled. The last third was a little dodgy. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all if James Gunn's out on his ass in a couple of years, unless Man of Tomorrow just is outstanding. If it's outstanding, he'll just be the new Kevin Feige for DC moving forward. But back to the article. This weekend's other newcomer, Jackass Best and Last, also stumbled at the box office with $8.2 million from 2,855 venues. The film faltered overseas with $1.9 million from 19 markets for a global debut of $10.1 million. Those ticket sales rank as the worst opening in the prank comedy series that's all about risking life, limb, and dignity. To compare, 2022's Jackass Forever, the property's prior installment, debuted at $23 million domestically and ended up with $80 million globally. However, Jackass 5 cost just $10 million to produce, so it doesn't need to earn much to turn a theatrical profit. For Jackass Best and Last, critics and audiences actually like the R-rated Reckless Prank sequel, which carries an 87% on Rotten Tomatoes and A- grade on CinemaScore. One reason the new entry didn't bring out a bigger crowd is because the film isn't entirely original. Best and Last features stars Johnny Knoxville, Steve-O, Wee Man, and their other Daredevil friends in a compilation of new and old stunts and skits. This is a weak opening and a sharp drop from the last opening in the series, says David A. Gross, who publishes the box office newsletter Franchise Re. However, he adds that very few comedies reach a 5th episode. That in itself is an accomplishment, and this one should be profitable even without strong overseas business. Neither of the new releases were close to dethroning Disney and Pixar's Toy Story 5, which ruled again with $70 million in its second weekend of release. That's a standard 55% decline from its huge $160 million debut. The 5th installment in the generation-spanning franchise is poised to be one of the year's highest-grossing releases, with $297 million domestically and $585 million globally, after just 12 days in theaters. Toy Story 5 is also expected to wind up as the biggest entry in the 31-year-old franchise, a record that currently belongs to Toy Story 4 with $1.07 billion. Obsession slid to the number 3 spot, ranking behind Supergirl and ahead of Jackass Best and Last. Now in its 7th weekend of release, the box office juggernaut has earned $9.8 million from 2,965 locations, a mere 27% decline in ticket sales. The low-budget horror sensation has generated $233.9 million domestically and $370 million worldwide, making Obsession a wildly profitable success for both Focus Features and theater owners. Hang on, let me check something real quick. The Thunderbolts worldwide box office. I think it's going to be basically the same as Obsession. So the Thunderbolts, was it last year? Yeah, it was last year. Grossed $382 million at the worldwide box office. I think the budget for the Thunderbolts was like $175 million. Compare that once again to Obsession, which is knocking at the door of the same box office as Thunderbolts. I mean, weeks ago, we ran out of adjectives with which to describe the success of Obsession, but just with each week that goes by, my jaw just drops a little bit lower. I just cannot believe how popular this movie has been. Steven Spielberg's sci-fi adventure Disclosure Day rounded out the top 5 with $8.1 million from 3,357 venues, a 54% drop from the prior weekend. So far, Disclosure Day has generated $94.3 million in North America and nearly $200 million globally after 3 weekends on the big screen. Since the PG-13 movie cost $115 million, Disclosure Day is estimated to need around $300 million globally to be profitable. I'm sorry, Stevie. I love you. I grew up on your movies. You made some of the best movies of the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, but I don't think you're going to make it there. So, yeah, Disclosure Day, for me, was a resoundingly disappointing movie. But back to the article. Among specialty titles, A24's comedy The Invite grossed $379,104 on just 7 screens in New York and Los Angeles, translating to a strong $54,158 per location. The movie's commercial appeal will be tested as it continues to roll out in select markets before expanding nationwide on July 10th. Olivia Wilde directed the well-reviewed The Invite, in which she and Seth Rogen play a bickering married couple who host a dinner party for their far more free-spirited upstairs neighbors Penelope Cruz and Edward Norton. Although this weekend's nationwide releases didn't live up to expectations, Hollywood is enjoying the best summer season since COVID, with revenues just 1.7% behind 2019, according to Rentrack. Next weekend is July 4th, which sees the release of the family-friendly Despicable Me spin-off Minions and Monsters, with tentpoles like Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey and Spider-Man Brand New Day on the horizon. These lovable little minions will provide some box office fireworks, predicts Paul Dagarbedian, Rentrack's head of marketplace trends. The summer hit parade just keeps rolling along. Now, as far as upcoming videos are concerned, I can't bring myself to go see Minions and Monsters. I've never seen a single movie in the Despicable Me franchise, and just for whatever reason, it has zero appeal to me. Maybe if I had, my nieces and nephews living here in New York, maybe they would drag me to see some of these movies. So I'm going to take a pass on that. But I do have some videos right over the horizon that I'm excited about. On a Tuesday, I'll be posting a 75th anniversary review for Strangers on a Train, one of my favorite movies by Alfred Hitchcock.
So, they swap murders.
Swap murders.
Each fellow does the other fellow's murder. Then there's nothing to connect them. Each one has murdered a total stranger. Like, you do my murder, I do yours.
On Wednesday night, I'll be recording a 50th anniversary review for The Outlaw Josie Wales, but I'll wait like a week before releasing that as we get closer to the actual anniversary. As far as House of the Dragon is concerned, I was excited to do weekly breakdowns, but after this past week's episode, admittedly, there was a lot of carnage, but at this point, it's such a departure from Fire and Blood. I concur with George R. R. Martin's opinion that the show is no longer his story. It's ventured into the realm of fan fiction, and the main reason I think it's fan fiction is because they've taken the characters of Alicent and Rhaenyra and tried to turn them into heroes, whereas in the book, they're the world's biggest bitches. They're basically Cersei from the original Game of Thrones, and it annoys the ever-living shit out of me that they won't allow those characters to be who they were as written in the source material. So I'm just gonna kind of dip in and out of House of the Dragon, but I won't be doing video breakdowns because I don't want to be a broken record every week saying, oh, well, this is this, but the book is better, because the book is better. What else? I guess the next movie I'll be seeing is the new Evil Dead movie the following week, but I'll definitely be coming back for a box office breakdown of Despicable Me this coming Sunday. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. I feel like when it comes to Supergirl, There are going to be a lot of very healthy, rational opinions out there about why the movie didn't do well. But I look forward to hearing what everybody has to say on that front. But if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking, subscribing, hitting that notification bell, becoming a member, all that good stuff. Hope everybody has an amazing week. Hope everybody has an amazing July 4th, 250th anniversary of the great US of A. Set off some firecrackers. Try not to blow off your fingers. But more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.